Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/PettyRevenge. In today's episode, Airbnb host left me an unfair review and it cost them hundreds. Smoker's delight. Don't send me your project info? I'll embarrass you in front of the whole class. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Airbnb host left me an unfair review and it cost them hundreds. I recently attended a friend's wedding a few hours away from home in the GF and I decided to get an Airbnb so she could bring her dog. We found a nice place that allowed pets, took off early from work and arrived Friday late afternoon. About 30 minutes later, the owner shows up to see how we're doing while we have the dog on the porch. We make some small talk, and he mentions that we didn't indicate we were bringing a dog. I felt bad, as it was an honest mistake, and I'd never lie to someone to get out of paying the pet fee. We tell him that and offer to pay the $25 fee on the spot. He refuses to take the money, and says that he loves dogs and eventually heads out. We don't think too much else about it, but when we leave, we decide to give the place a much more thorough cleaning than was in the instructions. The dog didn't chew any furniture or leave any other damage or mess, at least that we didn't clean up. In our minds, the trip was a success and the Airbnb was a great fit. I got the email from them to leave a review and I left a 5-star review and said the house and the owner were great. But then I saw his review of me and a private message where he blasted me for not telling him that I was bringing a dog, how dogs causes them so much more work, and how we shouldn't leave dogs alone in the house. This didn't sit well with me at all, since I thought we had handled this person to person when he came by on the first day. I was, and still am happy to pay for the pet fee, and there was no indication anywhere on the posting that we couldn't leave the dog alone for a few hours while we were at a wedding, nor did he say that while we chatted and told him we were here for a wedding. For him to post that on my Airbnb profile felt like a cheap shot. I responded to him that in the chat and said as much, and while Airbnb couldn't do anything about the review since it didn't violate any of their policies, my GF did point out that hosts aren't supposed to show up to the property unannounced. I had no idea and figured this was his property and he is allowed to show up, at least to check in with the guests. Normally I wouldn't care, especially since it was a very cordial interaction, but since he took a cheap shot with my review, I decided to do the same. I reached out to Airbnb support to tell them about his unannounced visit, and they forwarded it to their security team. I answered a few questions about the interaction, and they spoke to him. A week or so later, they let me know that he was in violation of their policy, and they refunded me 2/3 days of the stay, which came out to about $200. All because of a bad review. Smoker's delight. Back in the day, about 20 years ago, myself and my group of friends/co-workers all smoked tobacco, among other things. We were in a blue-collar industry and were all hard-drinking and partying young men and women. It was a great era. One of my closest friends, Steve, moved from the Midwest where we all lived back to his childhood hometown on the East Coast. The reasons for this move were financial and not relevant to this story. I flew out to visit a couple of times. We went sightseeing and generally had a good time. Anyone who's ever been part of a smoking social group knows it's not uncommon to bum cigarettes from one another. I give you one today, you return the favor tomorrow. No big deal. They're worth about 25 cents apiece. But common courtesy dictates you ask politely rather than just helping yourself to someone else's pack. Steve felt we were close enough friends to forego this formality at his discretion. One night, we're out on his front deck after dinner having beers and chatting. It's me, Steve, his wife, and a couple other friends. He had been helping himself to my pack in my shirt breast pocket all week during my visit. But the last time we stopped at a store for provisions, I got to feeling a little petty about this. So instead of picking up a standard pack as I usually do, I got a pack of menthols. I don't mind menthols every once in a great while. But Steve hates them. For those that don't smoke, having a menthol as opposed to a standard cigarette is akin to biting into a mint chocolate bar instead of regular milk chocolate. The taste can be surprising if you're not expecting it. So that night I make sure to have the menthol pack in the same shirt pocket easily accessible. Sure enough, Steve reaches for the pack. He pulls out a smoke and pops it into his lips. He's distracted by the conversation at hand and doesn't notice the faint scent off the unlit cigarette. I politely pass him my lighter with a grin on my face and wait for it. He looks at me with suspicious confusion, lights the tip, takes a big drag, then starts coughing. A few expletives later, I take my unfinished smoke back from him and begin to puff with evil satisfaction. It's not often that I was able to rattle him. But this one made all of us laugh. Seeing his wife snicker was the best part of the evening. He kept his hands to himself after that. Don't send me your project info? I'll embarrass you in front of the whole class. I've seen a ton of posts about crappy group project partners and thought I'd share mine. Way back in middle school, I had to do a group project for science class. I was put in a group with 3 boys that were all popular and all slackers. Each group member had to research an animal, along with having a specific role that came with extra responsibilities. The roles were leader, keep the group on track and make sure all the info was accounted for, editor, look over everyone's finished work and check for spelling/grammar errors, resource leader, cite sources for all group members in a specific format, and website organizer, put together the website for all the info to be presented on. Despite my objections, the boys decided that I would be the website organizer because a loser like me can't be trusted with the more important jobs. Okay, fine. Whatever. Over the course of the next week, I worked on researching my animal, setting up the various pages for each group member, presetting fonts for when they'd send me their info, and making it look pretty overall. Every day I'd ask them to send me whatever they'd finished so I could go ahead and add it to the website. Every day they said they weren't ready to send anything yet. By the end of Wednesday, day 3, I was done with my own research, as well as everything I could do in advance before receiving their info. After finishing, I sent my links to the resource leader so he could put them in the right format. Spoiler: he never did. I then asked the editor to check over my work, and after looking at it for about 3 seconds, he said it was fine and to leave him alone so he could finish a very important conversation he was having. The conversation was about Flappy Bird. Thursday and Friday were spent asking the boys to stop goofing off and to send me their info. They laughed it off and said they'd send it to me by Sunday morning, the day before the project was due. I was annoyed that I'd have to spend my weekend rushing to finish the project, but arguing was only getting me laughed at. Sunday rolls around and after lunch I emailed the boys asking where their info was and telling them I couldn't finish the project without it. No response. I sent a few more emails as the day went on. Again, no response. They refused to give me any contact info apart from their emails, so there was nothing else I could do. I get to science class on Monday and were one of the first groups to present. The first 2 groups presented all their info on the same website and they all took turns explaining what each of them contributed. It was here that I got a fun idea. The boys of my group went up one at a time and presented their, mostly incorrect, info on 3 separate, badly organized websites. After seeing them goof around so much, I was surprised they had even that much. I went last, and after I was done presenting, my teacher asked why there were 4 separate websites and why there were empty tabs on my website. I loudly told her and the whole class that my group members refused to send me their info and never informed me that they were creating their own websites. Being the website organizer, I also explained that the empty tabs were for their info, which they never sent me. Cue laughter from the whole class. After that I sat down with a huge grin on my face while the boys scowled at me. Because I did everything I was supposed to and more, I got an A. They were stuck with CS and a long lecture from the teacher. For a few months there was minor bullying from them, but I didn't care, I won. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.